Welcome, dear friends, guests, and subscribers. Thank you for following my live broadcasts and interviews. We're joined by entrepreneur and blogger Denis Elisevich. Welcome, Denis.
Hello, Alexander.
Friends, thank you all so much for liking, using super stickers, super chats, and for your moral, material, spiritual, and physical support. These discussions, because it seems like they bring more clarity and understanding overall, but in fact there isn't actually more clarity or understanding, but specific things had already been predicted, and you could have prepared for them. And as I understand it, everyone was right. It's just such an interesting time right now. Those who say the war will end very quickly and that it's already in its final stage are right, but those who say, guys, the war is about to escalate, there will be destruction, are also right. In general, we'll figure out everything that's happening right now. A quick note for the broadcast, you can use the QR code you see on the screen to ask a question. There will be a Q&A session. The Closed Club for Shilest viewers will also start with those questions. You can submit your questions there through the YouTube community or leave a question in advance. At the end, we'll talk with the chat. There's a special segment for that. Yes, the Q&A will wrap up with a conversation with the live stream chat. That's it. Subscribe to Elisevich and like this broadcast. Well, let's start with a poll for our conversation today. Here's the question. Why did Zelensky allow young people to travel abroad? In short on topic, a proper 0 AMO Insta should follow. He's afraid. He's trying to calm the protests, hoping for rallies in support of Ukraine in the West and the European Union. The young people will go, and there they'll stir things up even more. Well, or there's another option. To make the mobilization even stricter. That is, they'll let these ones go, but lower the bar or grab, catch, kill, and so on even more broadly. There are 4 options. Let's begin with that news, since it seems objectively good. But if you take a closer look, what do you think?
Well, first of all 4 answer options you gave the viewers are correct, but the first 2 are the real reason. Indeed, they are preparing for the elections whenever those elections may take place, and Trump could force the elections to happen. Just don't fall apart at the end of this year or next spring. And the second thing is that the agencies took measures during the Cardboard Maidan. And this age group you mentioned, for whom they passed this law, was the driving force behind the protest. And this is such a nice, I have to say, a nice way to say, go away, don't get in our way. Here's the continuation.
Well, it's very interesting. However, there were still some scandals. The government took a long time to get together, even though everything was supposed to be decided at the end of last week, and then published. But it wasn't published for a long time during the day. Sveridenko found it somewhere, said no until 21, but then it turned out to be until 22. What's with all the dancing around this decision?
This is how things always happen in our country. And it's just like that. Actually, it's such a simple question. They couldn't even do it quickly and properly. They couldn't even make a proper demonstration. What can you say about reforms? Officials and the government always mess things up. Bureaucracy is just like that. Sveridenko is a separate topic, and I'm not sure if you plan to cover that on the stream today, since Sveridenko is a direct participant and deserves a separate discussion.
Well, Sveridenko, since we've already mentioned her, let's talk about her. Listen, is she actually a good prime minister? What good initiatives has she had? Yesterday we were told about grants for entrepreneurs. Your topic, right? They said they would be giving them out like 100,000, 200,000. Really great. Today I don't even know. Handing out elephants, you see, so all the displaced people, not everyone, but each individually, I mean families, can apply for 2 million hryvnias. The e-Vidnovlenia housing program for displaced people is launching. They will start, however, with combat veterans, which is probably fair. Yes, you see, they are displaced people, combat veterans, first their families, then the others. Listen, they have such interesting initiatives. I'm not even mentioning scholarships for students or salaries for doctors. Listen, there was no money under Shmihal, as I understand it, but under Sveridenko, it suddenly appeared, not from Lydia Vaivali, but from this mine that was put up for tender today.
I can tell you, this mine, Toshka, the lithium one, is one of the largest lithium deposits in Europe. And the community of this settlement approached me, asking me to suggest to Elon Musk to take on the development. But in reality, this site is already on the list as part of a deal signed with the Americans. As for everything else, Sveridenko is 39 years old. She's a young woman, but she behaves... I used to laugh at Groisman. Remember those watermelons in Kherson? Remember he handed over the ribbons there? Well, in general it was funny. But Sveridenko outdid everyone in this Soviet-style behavior. She came in and right away. What does she do? She hands out imaginary, not real handouts. Let's give grants to entrepreneurs. It's just absurd. Have you seen the list, first of all, of the areas where this is given out? There are artists there, you know, so it's just wasting money. Even if someone gets it, it's still a waste. We should give loans to people already taking action, especially during the state's current difficulties. These are elections, that's my point. She tried to show what a good prime minister she is, as her team suggested. I don't know, but let's wait to see who gets it and how much. For now, it's just loud and rather foolish talk. As for land for the displaced people, by the way, I'll be making a video about that soon. I've been talking to Americans here. A solution is being sought for the 250,000 people remaining in territories that may be handed over to Russia, Donbas under our control, and Luhansk and Donetsk regions, and what to do with them. There is a solution, but again, this program, just like the grants, this housing, it's all a sham. In reality, getting this will be nearly impossible. This is typical behavior for such a state. Sveridenko is a typical Soviet type. Let's discuss another topic about him. Her brother is in London. She comes out and talks about it. That's important too. To open criminal cases against those who left retroactively, men of conscription age, or a fine of several $1,000s, I think it's about 170,000 hryvnias. And a journalist from Radio Svoboda came up, I think. Is your brother in London after the full-scale invasion? Yes, and you can see it on her. It's unpleasant. You saw that video. I mean, she got embarrassed. You can tell this topic was very painful for her. That's basically it. All the officials, all the leaders, all Sveridenko, friends get everything, enemies get nothing. The law is for everyone, but can be bent for a brother.
But let's be honest, all of this is done exclusively before the elections. And these Shkolas packages and all these payments and something else. You suggested that idea, and honestly, you could have fallen off your chair. However, I've already seen in different public forums, various insiders, different analysts, that Trump in theory could really give the go-ahead, but it will be presented in Ukraine as their own initiative. Just like Zelensky already floated a trial balloon in an interview a few days ago. He says, listen, yeah, leave me alone. Let's just solve this issue already. I mean, how much longer can this go on? Let's just hold this vote. Let them quickly re-elect me. And that's it. And we'll move on. We're in a war, and you're bothering me with elections like an annoying fly. Is it really true about Trump, especially after yesterday's very interesting remark that sanctions could also be imposed against Ukraine? Since the peace process isn't moving forward, yes, maybe he really will demand elections. And pay attention, in November...
Let's consider the most super mega scenarios. They announced them in September, and by law it's 90 days, October through December. I'm not sure it's realistic for it to happen in December, though there are various rumors here. This week, Yermak and Numerov are going to New York to meet Vitkov. The main topics will be territory exchange and elections. And what Trump said yesterday, did you notice how the Soros-backed press and all of ours just ignored it? He said it takes two to tango and Zelensky isn't a saint. That's a direct quote if you view it fully, not out of context. It was said there that sanctions are possible not only against Russia, but also against Ukraine. And right after that, there was talk about Zelensky, meaning it was about Zelensky. I want to reassure everyone, nothing will affect Ukraine. Ukraine is not integrated into the global economy. We don't need to act on these tariffs. And Trump doesn't aim to sink Ukraine, but it's a different story with Zelensky and his group. And please note, they're going to New York to see Vitkov, and Vitkov is the special representative for Russia. Who is our representative for Ukraine? General Kellogg, who recently received an award, the embassy had to hire extra security for him to fend off fans. He has so many fans. I had an unpleasant exchange with his daughter. These are war hawks, real war hawks, and I don't want to say much more about this, but it's very suspicious. General Kellogg's role was reduced to visiting Zelensky, taking photos, receiving a medal, while Vitkov will handle the negotiations. This is also very important. People usually don't pay attention to this, but the devil is in the details. It's important.
Vitkov actually shared some very interesting insider information. He basically revealed his cards just a little bit. Let's put it this way. Russia made a certain proposal, and a very advantageous one at that, in the context of these negotiations, and he emphasizes that this hadn't happened before. Well, now it becomes clear the pieces are coming together where suddenly Trump writes that, wow, there's been big progress. Well, he wrote it and that's it. And then he kind of writes again as if it's something new. But now we understand that this statement is about 2 weeks old, and now it's kind of being arranged in Washington. That was when everyone gathered, a little over a week ago. As I understand it, was this proposal already made or not? Or is this something even newer from Russia?
No, this was already there. It was all discussed. It was all on the table. When the press left, it was all discussed. Honestly, everyone knew about it in advance. Zelensky's strong claims like we don't trade territories are mainly for his domestic audience. In reality, they all negotiate and make deals. I'll repeat, that's its purpose. Yermak and Umarov will visit New York this week. So, well, the most important thing here is that when Trump was really putting a lot of pressure on Putin, there was a conversation like, give a concrete, realistic proposal on how to end the war. That's if we simplify the situation. And there was exactly this exchange of territories, meaning to give up Donbas and also Kharkiv and Sumy regions. Here's something specific to discuss. The situation could be as follows. Putin says, here's my proposal, but they refused everything. For Trump, it may be just like that. He doesn't care about our internal games and statements or video messages. He doesn't care about that. He needs results, and so does Vitkov. Everything will revolve around that now. Whoever gets in the way of results will be punished.
Sveridenko is getting in the way of results. Writing that Zelensky is basically threatening the life of the president of a country at war. Even if his term has expired, he's still the de facto head of the regime. As Lavrov says,
that's right. Well, what is Sveridenko? Who is Sveridenko? Sveridenko, he's a deep state product. Soros and British intelligence set up shop in Ukraine. Different boys and girls were chosen for this story. Sveridenko is one of the main characters in this topic. And you know what outraged me? I'll say up front, I don't care what Lavrov said, Zelensky is basically the head of the regime. But another thing is that Sveridenko appears on the pages of the Times. This is a globally recognized, historically incredible media outlet, Sveridenko and the Times. A man who's never built a doghouse in his life with such a background I don't even want to discuss is in the Times. This disaster has struck Ukraine, and you're right, he's directly threatening the Ukrainian president. This is a warning from Zelensky, from the deep state, if you agree to Putin's terms. It's not just about territory. The Russian language and neutrality are also part of the package, so things will return to how they were before the war. Do you remember Sveridenko and those guys attacked the presidential administration there? Remember, they were drawing graffiti by the door and some ran off with Yermak. Before the war, they managed to turn Yermak and Zelensky. Now the opposite is happening.
It's really interesting here. Who's recruiting whom? And honestly, it's quite noticeable. You can sense it a little bit. I would even say there's a hint of fear. One of the theories about why everyone rushed to Trump, to his office, to that Washington Regional Committee of yours when all the world leaders were there. Everyone is really afraid that Zelensky will bail, switch sides, that he'll turn on them. It's happened more than once. He might bite the hand that feeds him. He might betray them. Everyone's watching, but obviously they probably don't know for sure. These leaders, well, who is Kolomoisky anyway? Everyone understands the principles, the person who made him, namely the European leaders and globalists. And as you say, the Soros nest, they made Zelensky. They kind of put him in a tight framework and then basically kept promoting him further. That's why Volodymyr Zelensky has changed since 2019. He once promoted peace and the Russian language, but now he's much worse than Poroshenko. Well, I mean, yes, like I said, that's when they turned him around.
Yeah.
Are there any options that Zelensky might agree not to Putin's terms, which are being followed, but to Trump's terms?
You see, Trump doesn't really have specific terms. Trump has conditions for peace. Peace depends on both sides, but mostly, about 80%, on Putin and Russia. Because Russia is in a position of strength in this situation, unfortunately, that's why things are the way they are. There isn't really any Trump plan as such. Trump is generally flexible with tactics but unwavering in strategy. He may adjust his methods, but his goal, peace, remains constant. Peace is 80% up to Putin and 20% up to Zelensky and Ukraine. And Trump is following this scenario. Trump, what will belong to Ukraine, what will not. He doesn't care much about that, but he does care about Ukraine's future. Here's what I want to say about Britain. You likely saw the news. They're already interfering with our Central Election Commission before the elections. Trump didn't invest in this election partnership for no reason. America invested heavily only to give it to globalists for ruin. After the war, things will get more complicated.
Everything will get complicated, making things difficult for America as well. Because literally right before our broadcast, well, as I understand it, Trump hasn't woken up yet over there. I mean, in terms of making statements. We're expecting all of them by the evening, the main loud ones. But he's already posting on social media and specifically attacking Soros, his son Soros. I mean, he's basically saying they should be put in jail. Not about Ukraine, but about the funded pro-Palestinian rallies. So basically everyone understands the methods of color revolutions. In light of this, I'd like to touch on a certain, well, a kind of global topic. But is it true that Trump is the kind of person who can, if not imprison, then at least create serious problems specifically for Soros and his son's successor regarding all the foundation's affairs and so on? Just recently, I think you also came across the statement by Kakakaladze. He's the former Dynamo football player, the one who's now in the Georgian Dream Party and heads the city, well, the capital, right? So he's well known. And he said a very interesting phrase. He said, yes, the West offered us to open a second front against Russia. They directly offered weapons and threatened us and gave us money, and we did everything. We have all the data, all the evidence, but for now, in the interests of our country, we can't make it public. The main question, and what everyone who follows politics is waiting for, when will everything start coming out and the documents start appearing? This also concerns the Soros nest as a whole. Yes, this horror that this nest has brought to Ukraine, specifically about Zelensky and his team. So, are we expecting a series of these scandals? Or like 3 months ago, everyone was waiting for sanction lists and scandals, but nothing happened.
We all always want things to happen quickly. But specifically regarding the big fish, well, we can count the will and fate of Zelensky among the big ones. That, of course, will happen last of all. People want sanctions on everyone, Putin, Zelensky, even Trump, but it doesn't work like that. It's a long road, and as I said, the chosen strategy and tactics have already changed a few times. Soros is certainly a main architect of these troubles. As you said, in America, the president can't just call and order Soros's arrest. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work like that here. Trump can make the law work. Before, Soros's partners were in power in America, and they didn't need to do that. But now Trump is in power, and Trump can make the law work. And there he said, under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, to prosecute Soros. This is all very serious. Soros funds various bad people in America. Prosecutors, judges, now they will be funding Islamists, the mayor of New York, a communist. Naturally, this shocks everyone, and Trump will fight it. The thing is, this is a very long and very complicated game, no matter how much we all wish it weren't. And about Kakakaladze, yes, it's all the same with the so-called United States Agency for International Development, both in Ukraine and there. In Georgia, things may come to light faster. Otherwise, Kaladze wouldn't have gone on air with this. He did so for a reason.
Still, regarding expectations of some global and major changes, I would like to add here the further geopolitical developments. As I understand it, there won't be a meeting with Xi Jinping, but Putin will be there for 4 days, which means it's a big visit, especially by modern standards. So it's really significant, and there are major events there. The globalist press is stirring things up. Maybe there are Soros's cheese snacks or those from other interested parties. What's happening in America now? The data came in that the Democrats are under the bench, literally, and the Republican Party, well, it's kind of theirs now. Popularity and recognition are rising. Hello, Svekintsev. Numbers are increasing. I'm not talking about Trump's ratings right now, although they've gone up, but look, the Republicans are on top compared to the Democrats, and Trump is kind of being egged on. The press writes that Xi Jinping will show some kind of weapon that is capable of striking the United States. In short, they're stirring things up. What does this contact between Putin and Xi Jinping give us? Primarily in the context of America and future decisions. And is it possible, at least geopolitically, do you see such a development of events? Well, in general, to just sit down, the three of them, and basically decide everything. I mean, because yesterday during the press conference, yes, Trump leans that way. Based on the conversation, he says, yes, that's fine. We're strong, independent, and sovereign. Me, Trump, Putin, and Xi Jinping could sit down and agree. But what does Ukraine gain?
Well, it might look different on the outside, but in reality, the three of them can come to an agreement. Because China is the #1 enemy and rival of the United States, and Trump's goal, as well as his administration's, is to pull Russia, to break the Russia-China alliance. And in this sense, Trump himself was, in a way, fueling and igniting it. He recently said Russia and China are actually opponents since China has many people and Russia has much free land. Dropping these hints ensures the three won't get together. As for Ukraine, I'll repeat once again, we are in a weak position, and that's the fault of those who were in power and those who are currently in power. And when you're in a weak position, when you're completely dependent, you do make some decisions, but you definitely don't decide everything. I know no one will let Ukraine be divided. And I repeat, it's not for nothing that America, even if it's a different administration, has poured money in here, and it's not for nothing that so much effort is being made. Ukraine is, maybe by fate, but also a hero, a geopolitical player, purely because of its geographical location and its size. When Trump says it's for Zelensky to decide, he's just playing to the audience about what kind of peace will happen, and so on. They're just diplomatically boosting him, probably stroking his ego a bit like, look, we respect you, but in reality we all understand that we decide very little, 80% of the decisions are made without us.
What room for maneuver does Zelensky have right now?
None at all. He's in checkmate.
What can he do, well, take action on? Because on Independence Day recently, we saw that he approaches the issue very actively. Look, a change in rhetoric. We are not a victim, we are a fighter. We are so cool that we can gather world leaders in one place in just one day. We are, well, powerful. We haven't lost, well, we haven't won, but we won't lose anymore. That's the kind of statement. Through Ukraine, the United States and Europe are uniting, so he's ready to fight, but at what cost? You mean the geopolitical aspect?
Yes, it's all ridiculous to listen to. He's not ready to fight anyone except his own people and his own political opponents. All these statements are what we discussed with you at the beginning of the broadcast. It's preparation for the elections. They're getting ready for the elections very actively. They're creating a new party. We talked about Sveridenko in this material. The Guardian published something about Zaluzhny. There are these leaks going on. That's the whole story. They want Fedorov as #1 for the party. Basically, they never stopped being involved in politics, just to a greater or lesser extent. Now that the office is involved in politics, we're preparing for upcoming elections and have been clearly informed they will happen. And when Zelensky visited the White House, everyone just ignored it too. I translated and posted that when Trump teased him about the elections. And what would the press do to me if I did that here in America? He hinted and laughed. Here the press would tear me apart, but Zelensky didn't get it. Despite being called a quick-witted showman, he didn't get it. They actually mocked him. That's why elections are planned, and Zaluzhny accepts reality. The real rating today, unfortunately, I'll say unfortunately, is 25%. Zelensky has 15%. These are the real numbers. And basically, the goal is to bring these ratings down. God forbid we have such presidents.
Well, of course, sociology shows something different. The latest rating shows that 31% are ready to vote for Zelensky and 25% for Zaluzhny. Poroshenko has 6, Budanov 5, Razumkov 4, and 3% each for Goncharenko, Timoshenko, and Prichula. Well, in general, they're already showing us how things should be and how it all should look. But listen, Zaluzhny's hypothetical, as yet non-existent party holds first place in Ukraine according to this rating. And here he comes out and talks about school, about how, look, well, he actually said a lot of nonsense. But the very fact of him appearing in this role, Zelensky and Zaluzhny are like Putin and Medvedev.
I don't want to believe it, but these offers were made, and there's information. It's rumored he was offered $10 million last year to join the Verkhovna Rada as Zelensky's party's top candidate. He's just a figurehead. That statement and interview you mentioned about the children that we all saw, it's terrible. A person sits there speaking in such a slow tone with what people in Ukraine call a solemn look and says absolutely terrible things that we need to get ready to shed blood. Unfortunately, fewer people are willing to die for the country if the future president cares about that number. Things are bad for this country and no one has ever sacrificed for it while making it great. This isn't for Zaluzhny. We were discussing his rating, 35% last year. Today it's 30 by your data, 25 by mine. Let's average it to 27 or 28%. Do you know why it dropped? Zaluzhny himself brought it down by making very rare but extremely serious statements. Statements of cosmic stupidity, like in Heart of a Dog, statements that are foolish on a grand scale. And if he keeps going in the same way, especially if media people keep helping him, if they keep lowering this rating, it could be 15 or even 10% by year end. Zelensky is the same. And we've already discussed all this today. And these statements are really meant for people who are completely clueless. But I don't believe that any person, of course, he has some electorate, but it's a minority. A minority. A totally new figure should step onto the stage for the elections.
A figure for the winner.
Yes, so look.
It seems like I'm converting everyone. Well, this is analyst Alexander Lunetsky. We had our last interview with him quite a while ago, by the way. He says, guys, the president in Ukraine, will already be, it's already a specific person. It's already him. He's already been appointed. They just haven't told everyone yet. A specific person whom you all know, whom you all more or less have a normal attitude toward both sides. He will be, and he kind of already is. And he just told the story of Zelensky when Yovanovitch, yes, who was the American ambassador to Ukraine, they were holding a casting there, and it was all calm. They wanted Vakachuk, but he didn't fit. He couldn't be the one. They chose a good comedian, so here you go, Volodymyr Zelensky, and that's it. And then those movies started, Servant of the People, all those series, everything kind of, and they spun it all up. But it was all set in motion by them, and supposedly someone has already been chosen now too. We just don't know who that someone is. It's like it was with Zelensky. Remember, there was all that, I'm running, I'm not running, I'll go, I won't go. And then on New Year's Eve, he said, I'll go. Well, now someone will show up very quickly and everyone will vote for him. As a journalist, do you believe such events could happen?
Guests who say things like that are cool. It happens instantly. Ratings, views, I know that's top, but actually this was the case when Ukraine was under the wing of United States Agency for International Development and Soros. Now it has broken away from there. Soros and United States Agency for International Development still have influence, and so does Britain, but Ukraine is breaking away from them. That won't happen now. People don't know the candidates. Honestly, people don't know the candidates. America won't be betting on just one person. The names and surnames of these people don't really know. Let's put it this way. They're not professional politicians. Not all of them are professional politicians. So I wouldn't believe in these things, to put it mildly. Right now, specifically. Before, it was like that, yes. There was Vakarchuk, Zelensky. That's all true. That's how it was. But now it's not.
So who could come now? Let's think logically. Zelensky, Zaluzhny, everyone, right now, everyone is talking about them, about all of that, yes. But even so, if you look at it theoretically and a new figure appears, well, they can just smear him in the mud with a snap of their fingers, drag him through the dirt. The image of any professional in any field, yes, in any field, and it's kind of beneficial right here. What's the problem, you see, when it's Zelensky? And that's why we refer to previous elections. We simply don't have any others. Yes, they were supposed to happen, but didn't, so we refer to the past. Well, Poroshenko didn't really go after Zelensky that much. He didn't really undermine him, and I even remember this story coming up about Zelensky being Teflon, meaning that any dirt just bounces off him. But let's be honest, there wasn't really a strong campaign or powerful creativity to destroy Zelensky's name. But here they will destroy and tear apart anyone who raises their head and says, I'm ready, let's rebuild the country, peace, politics, military policy, you have honor and respect, but please come to the government offices in civilian clothes, in suits. We're moving toward peace, but as soon as such a person appears, they'll be hounded.
Yes, they'll do exactly as you described, but there's another side. And the thing is, these elections will be the most technologically advanced and internet-driven, and the influence of television on the next elections will be the lowest in Ukraine's history. Because the telephone itself made all this happen. Everything will be on the internet. So if some unclear people or even familiar ones try to smear such a candidate here, there's another side to the coin. There are Americans who, with the help of social networks and a few posts from some important people, raise the authority and rating of such a person to the skies. And it's not even a matter of huge amounts of money, although of course that's needed too. You have to look at the picture objectively here. This will be a real showdown. You know how? I'm not sure that these elections will actually determine the future of Ukraine. If these elections happen so soon and so quickly, then most likely it will be a technical figure who will be there during the transition period. It won't be a reformer president yet, because you can't jump straight into reforms after such a terrible war, especially with people who have a mentality like ours. Zaluzhny's rating reflects people's mentality. They often don't know why he's praised. They don't know his views, they don't know what's on his mind. They don't know how competent he is on key governing issues, yet they already support him. Why? General Scala, he's a handsome, broad-shouldered man in a military uniform. That's how our people vote. Unfortunately, they don't choose ideas, they fall in love with personalities.
Well, he reminds many people of Yanukovych by his manner of speaking, and, well, his build in general, just by himself, and overall, yes. So the news comes in. The Italian Prime Minister said a security guarantee for Ukraine, like NATO's Article 5 but without membership, is now the main option being considered. Meloni, Italy's Article 5-based proposal is the main agenda item. I think we should be proud of that. Listen, well, let's congratulate Meloni. She has something to be proud of. This is an Italian proposal, Italian ingenuity. So she proposed to provide Article 5 without membership. This is one of the options, and the proposal confirms that Ukraine's accession to NATO is, well, not being considered, as Trump said, although there is this NATO light option. Yeah, they're already trying to put something together. Bloomberg is writing about this, and in fact dedicates a lot of print to the future guarantees. Dennis, what is this whole topic about security guarantees? Well, look, they're just kind of leading us on. What guarantees are we even talking about? Some discuss contingents, others mention Article 5 without NATO, and another group says something different. We need to end the war and agree on peace before talking about guarantees, but everyone is rushing ahead. I remember how Zelensky made a fool of himself for several months, telling everyone along with the Europeans that nothing would happen. We need a ceasefire, just a ceasefire, and only a ceasefire. And then we'll see, well, that's it. Putin went to see Trump in Alaska. It's no longer on the agenda. Everyone has already agreed, even the Europeans, that it's all nonsense. We need a peace treaty right away. So let's work on a peace treaty. These are guarantees, a way to disrupt negotiations, discussions of these fifth articles without NATO.
In reality, everything is as it is. Trump, due to circumstances, can't say everything. He doesn't need to say everything he could say. It exists. United States Vice President J.D. Vance, in his latest interview with an American television channel, clearly said, "We will only talk about security guarantees when peace is fully established. Not a truce, not a ceasefire, no ceasefire at all, but complete peace." Then we move on to the issue of security guarantees. Then Meloni came, this is her own proposal. She even brought it to America when Musk was with Trump. She is on very good friendly terms with Musk, and she came to Mar-a-Lago at that time and told all this. Actually, this happened sometime at the beginning of this year. It wasn't born yesterday. As for effectiveness, of course, it will all look good on paper, but in reality, these are not any guarantees of security. Even as a NATO member, Article 5 offers no guarantees. If you read it, you'll see NATO partners may help as they have with Ukraine, but aren't required to do more. Deployment of troops from partner countries is not guaranteed. In certain circles, what you called NATO light, here in America, in certain circles, it's called neutrality plus, neutrality plus, neutrality, neutrality. In reality, it's all just neutrality. And I'll say for myself, as a suggestion, it will all look good on paper, but none of it will actually work, truly work. It's to bring in major American businesses, including Musk, into Ukraine, and Russia will never directly attack American assets. Serious ones, as their owners have vast wealth and major media resources. Musk can crash the Russian stock market in 2 days and everything else, and it would just be suicide. Everything in the economy should be so interconnected that war becomes unprofitable.
You see, it's the same kind of situation here, very specific. So, what will Ukrainians have by the end of the war? Vance clearly says no later than 6 months. Well, basically, it all fits into the math that we calculated here, like, what are the current markers, right, until the 15th again, but this is Trump, this is America, and, well, how many deadlines like this have there already been? Some people have counted, 14 or 15, well, mentions of deadlines. So for now, yes, by September 15th, Zelensky and Putin are supposed to meet. But as of today, this idea looks pretty pointless. Because this meeting won't happen, but they're telling us about security guarantees, specifically about this meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Umarov and Yermak are going to talk with Vitkov, and Vitkov says, yes, no, well, they can meet. And Trump says, yes, they'll meet. Listen, it really gives the impression, when Trump discussed Lavrov, the question was about Russia not recognizing something, and he called it nonsense, saying everyone is just pretending. Well, kind of posers, yeah, well, that's how it is. Trump, the first poser, everyone sees and understands this. He's also talking about himself. But is a meeting between Putin and Zelensky realistic now? Yes?
I believe in it just 1%, not 99%. But, again, in these very narrow circles, even such strange formats were discussed. Do you remember when the Tambul negotiations began? Right at the very beginning. There was a meeting once when the Americans were rushing around the hotel or elsewhere, moving from room to room. From the Russians to the Ukrainians, from the Ukrainians to the Russians, and so on. A similar idea came up about a Zelensky-Putin meeting. I just don't believe it or see it happening. Besides everything you've said, Trump also said that this war has turned into a personal conflict, meaning between Putin and Zelensky. I've said this for a while, they're just competing, and Zelensky shouldn't have gotten involved. He got involved in it, and it ended badly for Ukraine. Now it's also a personal matter. I just can't imagine.
Well, hold on. Then it turns out there won't be any peace either. Or they'll cancel it again like a ceasefire.
Yeah, either they'll cancel it or they'll replace one of the main figures or both of them. Someone will speak for Putin and someone for Ukraine. If that's the case, that's the question, but it's very complicated. We're discussing it, trying to understand. This is yet another confirmation for people of how complicated everything is. It may seem easy, like in a beautiful Hollywood movie, but it's not like that at all. Everything is very complicated.
Bezuglaya comes out, and now this informational propaganda trend is emerging. That means the mobilization system is being criticized by Bezuglaya, saying that the defense forces can't be systematically modern when they're led by generals who are retirees. The mobilization age starts at 25, basically skipping the peak of physical abilities and the adaptability of human intelligence. In short, mobilization should have started at 18, and then everything, the whole army, would have been in place and things would have been much better. And many people criticize this decision about leaving and say, well, guys, let's start from 18. Is what is currently allowed what the Territorial Recruitment Center is doing now? Well, look, the military commissar got hit in the face with a shovel during some scuffle, and now they're demanding 50,000 hryvnias from an ordinary villager through the court. That's one thing, but when these military commissars catch people with deferments and basically kill them, that's another matter. Like that breakdance coach, or like another person whose heart stopped. But he was all beaten up, really beaten, and his heart just stopped. Do you understand that this system, these gears, they won't stop them? It's a very interesting story. So it seems like a kind of relaxation. A good president gives money, and look, Europe, by the way, doesn't even notice this. Well, with us, it's about $1 billion a month, Zelensky says, and I think he'll get $1 billion a month easily. On the other hand, there's this barbarism and a truly horrifying, almost concentration camp-like situation. From the perspective of the Territorial Recruitment Center, where do you think the system will move during these talks about guarantees and negotiations? Will it happen this coming fall?
As the war nears its end, lawlessness will rise in the Territorial Recruitment Center system. Because it's no secret that this is a business, even for those smaller fish. It's their way to feel important in life, having gained power, weapons, and authority. But when the time comes, all of this will be cancelled very quickly. Back to the start about Bezula. Please note, who in the media criticized the decision to let people up to 22 travel abroad? It's all United States Agency for International Development. Soros, Sveridenko criticized this, Butусов criticizes this, and Butусов, and Bezukla. And here's what's sneaky about it. Then they don't even say this on their own behalf. They immediately attach some post-war real person to it. They always hide behind the military, like how Yermak now wants only people with combat experience in the president's office. Why is that? If you criticize these people, you're seen as anti-military and the enemy. That's the kind of meanness, I'll tell you. If you remember, at the end of Biden's term, Blinken came to Kyiv. Remember with the guitar when Brinkel was there? Who did he take pictures with, including with Butусов? If Kamala Harris were president today, then Butусов would be pushing for a decision every day. All to the front at 18. I'm leading you to this, so look, whoever is against this, it's all Soros, it's all United States Agency for International Development, it's all warmongers, it's all warmongers. That's my only hope. And it applies to our talk about Zaluzhny. People want peace. Whether you like me, someone else, or an ideology, you should want peace. That's what's important for most people. We'll address ideology during the elections.
So wait, you mean peace in a lost war?
A lost war means a country has surrendered, but I don't see the current situation as surrender. There are many stories. Israel and other countries exchanged territories during wars. World War II ended long ago, and this security system is ineffective. I'm not giving up territories or supporting that. I didn't cause this situation, and it's not my decision, but I don't see this as the end. That's where it ended for Ukraine. Ukraine is still a huge country with a large population, with a great geographic location, even though many people think otherwise. President Trump is currently in office, if we're talking about a normal president. In Ukraine, you can do very serious things for Ukraine and make significant progress even before the end of Trump's term if elections are held quickly. But none of the current politicians need this.
I mean, there was such a rude incident today, a continuation. Well, it was terrible. So the Desnyansky district of Kyiv, there's a district state administration there. It's headed by someone, well, a very peculiar guy, former comedy club comedian, Bakhmatov, Maxim Bakhmatov. Honestly, he impressed me. There was one of his relatively recent interviews. So where? He talks there about, well, basically he's that kind of energetic guy, and you can really read from him what exactly is behind certain actions, right? And in some podcasts, he was talking about how there isn't a single successful Orthodox country. There are Protestant countries, there are other kinds of countries, but Orthodoxy supposedly is so bad and so on. And basically, why am I bringing up this example? And when he explains in his own way, in simple language, after all, he's an official, whatever you may say, he's a representative of that office they're going to and what they're trying to do. And you immediately understand that when people shout about how orthodoxy is being destroyed. Yeah, they have something different, that's how it is. So do you understand him? Today, there was a professional scandal at the district state administration, the deputy mayor, the deputy Klichko, Anna Starostenko. And this recently appointed Bakhmatov, well, it was almost a total blow-up. So she was elected as the deputy mayor in the Desnyansky district, came to the report, tried to say something to Bakhmatov. He started to take the microphone from her, wouldn't let her speak, shouting that he's the president's man. You're the president's man. He says, how long is this going to work in Ukraine? That's the president's man?
Until people vote for an ideology, not for a handsome man or a beautiful woman or something else, By any criteria, but the main one, as president, it's about competence, what you build and how you'll build it. As for Bakhmatov, I don't like this person. He changed teams like gloves. He works wherever he gets paid, wherever there is protection. He always joins the strong against the weak. He has no ideology at all. In my understanding, he is not a man of honor. But I ask you and all Orthodox Christians not to be offended by me, what he said about orthodoxy. This is confirmed by the numbers. Is it possible to break this trend? Of course it's possible, but for that, Ukraine needs to introduce freedom of religion. Orthodox Christians will still dominate anyway, and no one objects to that. Ukraine is a secular state, so there's no need to focus on that. The documents confirm its secular status. But when it's convenient, they make it out to be a religious state, like Israel, for example. But Ukraine is a secular state, and this issue, I think, doesn't need to be commented on at all. We just need to get things done.
Well, look, there's also this point. Don't attack an Orthodox state. Maybe something will come out of them. And here, too, the criterion for success is very important. So, let's be honest, some people make an idol out of themselves, Europe, but then, remember Maidan 2014 Europe with its lace panties, and Poroshenko says, here's coffee in Vienna, all that. Well now, misfortune happened and misfortune helped, and many ended up in Europe, and we start comparing. And wait, services have advanced in Ukraine. Well, it's just more convenient to do some things. That is, this idol started, kind of collapsing. It's clear that there's a war in Ukraine, and obviously the people who left are unlikely to return. And it's clear that, the very fact is life goes on just the same. And it's very trendy, for example, in Russia, to talk about some toilets, those wooden ones, it's very trendy. But in fact, this war really slowed Ukraine down. If it weren't for this war in its physical form, I don't know what would have happened. There, like in Moscow, robots would probably deliver food. Same thing, some know-how and various things. War still slows development, right? Here's my next question. Are there any options at all? So are there options that they'll just let Ukraine go right away? What's the message? It's not the globalists letting Ukraine go, and as for Trump, it seems like he doesn't really care about Ukraine. He's just chasing the globalists, and we end up being just tools in someone else's hands. And if they let us go, then accordingly there will be some kind of development after the war.
Alexander, you've touched on so many topics, and of course it's all very important. It's important for people to hear this. Let's review the criteria for a country's success. I don't know yours or the viewers, but I'll share mine. Gross domestic product, overall gross domestic product per capita, and the level of freedoms in the country, the level of personal freedoms. Because this directly depends on how much the state allows you to fulfill yourself, or whether it turns you into a product of propaganda or something else. I don't see any truly successful Orthodox countries. I wish it were different, but that's just how it is. With its resources, Russia could be 10 times better governed. That's my opinion. Regarding Europe, I completely agree with you. What is Europe now? Maybe a flagship of something? Yesterday, a Ukrainian woman was raped, near the Eiffel Tower.
Can you even imagine that?
A 17-year-old Libyan.
Yes.
This may not directly relate to North Carolina, but yesterday in America, a black man stabbed a 23-year-old Ukrainian woman. Look at what happened in Switzerland the other day. It's a nightmare what illegal migrants are doing. What's happening in Britain, even though it's not an European Union member, it's still Europe, once a flagship of Europe. Starmer, who's now traveling everywhere and he's a true globalist, a real leftist who's trying to decide the fate of Ukraine. These same savages are trying to rape 12-year-old girls. Did you see it or not? Musk was posting about it all day yesterday. And other girls, apparently sisters, 2 of them, and this guy wants to either rape a 12-year-old girl. She's confronting him with an axe and a hammer. What should I do? Does this mean I have to defend myself? The police arrive, and you know who they arrest? The girl. This is today's Europe. I really don't like the expression the West and referring to Europe like that. Calling it Western civilization isn't about its values. These are globalist leftist values. Western civilization's values ended in Europe 15 or 20 years ago. Everything else wasn't it. Coffee in Vienna is fine. Austria is great and Europe too, but its leadership is awful now. Scholz, Starmer, Macron, they're all terrible. That's what we're talking about now regarding the globalists. It's all being led by the globalist agenda. Let me repeat, Trump won't hand Ukraine to the globalists. He understands what's happening. Did you read that Trump classified the data about negotiations with Russia, the peace talks from 5 countries, including the United Kingdom? Recently, J.D. Vance defended all of us who use iPhones from Starmer. They wanted to pass a law. Either you pay or Apple pays the United Kingdom $10 million a day. Or at the very first press of a button, leak all the data from everyone's iPhone. Vance fought this off. That's what this nightmare is, what's happening, and Trump has gone to real war with all of this. And of course, Ukraine can't get involved in all of this, but there's no way. I support good relations with Russia and am not against Russians or our country's ties, but I dislike Putin's governing style. Friendly relations may not happen soon. Due to the incident, Len, I can't imagine it, but what am I leading you to overall? Soon, there may be a situation where all of us will have to fight against those we've just talked about.
Yes.
Who were standing by force in the tower, you understand? So we need to think about this. And why quarrel among ourselves and create such a situation when Trump understands this perfectly well? They're putting strong pressure on Britain, summoning them to Congress possibly by the end of this week or next. Well, I think the future Prime Minister is the head of the Reform Party to Congress to discuss freedom of speech. There, registering social networks requires all your documents. iPhones are a nightmare. And how can they criticize Russia? Russia can be criticized by Trump, by me, or by someone else who lives in the free world with free views. But when Starmer does it, who's arguably tougher than Putin and hides behind Europe, it's cognitive dissonance or simply just data.
Yes, you see, that's the whole point of what's happening, because that's exactly how it is. If we, try to imagine, some kind of future for Ukraine. Well, let's put it this way. The younger generation, I don't think that, in general, because of today's decision, people will leave, will run away. Many from 18 to 22, that's for sure. Yes, they'll just all get together. It's not necessary to go there. There are some simpler options. They're young, so they'll just wait for their age, like turning 25 and so on from abroad. And that's the right thing to do. I want to emphasize that. It's the right thing to do because, after all, thank you. You need to invest in yourself, especially at that age. Well, look, these people left the front and no one really knows where to send anyone back. No one knows where anyone will be demobilized. Only this, how do you call it, gay language ombudsman in Odessa? Yeah, it's strange. It seems like he was detained and sent to the Central Commission, but now he's posting, "I'm coming to you," and already picking on the driver of the Kiev-Odessa bus. Can you imagine? So they managed to get demobilized, dodge the draft, collect bribe money, and some other things too. Well, you remember those scandals, right, about that guy? So they managed to do it, but normal people can't. Either they get beaten up, or basically they get sent over there toward Pokrovsk, in that direction. I mean, people, we've lost a lot. And it's unlikely that the end of the war, I mean the actual fighting, will immediately give us some kind of boost. What kind of country will be... What is the right kind of country to be? That's why I want to ask the question without focusing on personalities like Zelensky, Zaluzhny, or the president's politics.
Step by step. So the new president must first of all reconcile the nation, including both the military and civilians, those who left and those they call waiters. The first step to reconciliation. Next, a person should get rid of all collectivism and individualism. A person should take control of their own destiny and health. The new president must say the first words: "I will never close the borders under any circumstances." You must have 100% trust in the state. "I will never violate your rights. I will never suppress freedom of speech," meaning you have the right to your own opinion. This is the foundation, the basis. Next comes judicial reform and tax reform. Without an honest court, there will be no state. That's already a fact. We've all seen it. You can make impressive police reforms, even if they're somewhat fake. But without a judicial system, if a person doesn't have rights and real proper protection, nothing else works. And then let everyone act in these favorable and free conditions in a neutral status so that no war threatens them. A person fulfills himself when the state doesn't dictate to him. Here you have low taxes, here you have all the freedoms, and then everything else depends on you. That's when the state will prosper. But they want to split people into groups. The right kind of Ukrainian, not the right kind, or not Ukrainian at all, to create even more conflict, to divide and conquer. And right here, you've actually come to the most important point. This is the key confrontation. This is what people should think about, what they want in the elections. And if we're given candidates who don't offer any of the things I've mentioned, then we'll have to make other decisions. Maybe sabotage the elections or do something else. But if we accept this now, Ukraine can avoid a new war and a bad outcome. First of all this incitement of a new war, the continuation of what Sveridenko says, what Zaluzhny says, he's a warmonger if you are going to prepare for something like that. How much are you willing to die for? Sash, I saw the voting ratings by country, practically the percentage of men who are ready to go defend their country. Ukraine showed 62%, but in reality, we see that it's not 62, but 10 to 20. In Poland, I think it's 28 only on paper, but in reality, it will be 8. They surveyed civilians. Do you want your armies to defend Ukraine after a truce or peace? There, the Germans said they are categorically against it, the majority. And nobody wants it, nobody wants war. In reality, people don't want this, but Zaluzhny is fueling it, and these figures are fueling it too. So people, listen, you shouldn't choose United States Agency for International Development and Soros, and not only do you need to choose the right one, but that right one also needs to make it onto the ballot. Elections should be overseen by leading countries, especially America. Let everyone join the elections freely and ensure protection for all. This is crucial, since an election without choice is no better than a bad choice.
The war is ending. There are some indirect signs, or at least I see them that way. Various Telegram channels are leaking information that supposedly Yuri Boyko, you know who he is from the Servant of the People party, there used to be the opposition platform, now it's like Servant of the People too. Yuri Boyko was in the corridors telling everyone that there will definitely be elections in spring 2026 and everyone should get ready. Plus, that's kind of an indirect intelligence sign, and also pay attention here. The rector of Kharkiv University, Kharkiv National University, named after Karazin, announces that starting from the second semester, meaning in 2026, everyone will return to in-person learning. So these are, well, kind of, signs that don't really mean much, I agree. You're probably going to write in the comments now that this is all nonsense, that it's not true. The war will go on for a long time, but there are already some signals, some signs like this. And the main thing is for this world not to waste a normal life. And about the Ukrainians, just a remark, listen, this is just a circus. It's really a circus. Masha and the Bear, when it was published there, brought a lot of money from Ukrainian YouTube users into the Russian budget. Because in Ukraine, people sit and turn on Masha and the Bear for their kids, not what those Ukrainian animators made. Maybe it's good, but they watch Masha and the Bear, you see, and that's how this story turns out. Whenever there's a survey, it's not just that we speak Ukrainian, but kids watch Masha and the Bear. And there's a problem with school children. They consume Russian content, songs, YouTube, shows, comedians, all of it. Well, this is hypocrisy and should be removed. Most importantly, we must be honest with ourselves. And if you speak Russian, go out and speak Russian. But that doesn't mean you have a bad attitude toward the Ukrainian language, or that you can't speak it or don't know it. That's the hypocrisy. I'm afraid this will play a big cruel joke on people in the next elections.
In addition to the fact that we're continuing this topic with you right now, I said the maximum level of freedoms, you understand. That's exactly what the level of freedom means. What you're saying right now, that's exactly the level of freedoms. And if someone comes and incites, then of course it will happen. Right now you're mentioning Masha and the Bear. Ombudsman Umovny seeks to ban Russian music on Spotify and other platforms. When the Russian language is discussed in peace talks, it shows the instigator's meanness. Who truly controls Ukraine? That's why, of course, Article 10 about the Russian language should be enforced. Neutrality is, of course, important, but you're talking about the future. There are people there. In 3 years, Zelensky has changed Ukraine and brought out its worst societal traits. Believe me, if the right leader comes, he'll reorient people even faster and bring out their best qualities. In a year, let's say because Zelensky has gone through a path, I believe that Putin took 20 years to go through. Zelensky has only gone through in 3 years. Putin is ahead in many ways, but the leader of Svoboda will change people in just a year. When these Manzyuk and others will simply become irrelevant, but not in the sense that I'm saying let's put Manzyuk in prison or kill him.
No, not in prison, not send away. No, let them live in a state of being ignored. Well, a lack of attention from anyone. That's the scariest thing for such people. When you're this gay ombudsman in Odessa, language ombudsman, where did that even come from? Well, do you understand what I mean? It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy for people who only have this, all these ombudsmen and everyone else. Only with this status can they mean something in this world. Of course, when that's gone, you'll immediately have to prove that you're a professional, that you're hardworking, that you're open to new things. Well, basically a pro, an ace at something in your own field. And it doesn't matter what language it will be in. For example, a waiter can serve a customer well in Russian, English, or Ukrainian. What's important is how professionally you do it, and that's what will be valued. This imbalance needs to be changed. Friends, let's sum up our discussion today. Why did Zelensky decide to let young people go abroad? Well, it's all just like in the very beginning. 7% think that he hopes for rallies in support of Ukraine in Europe, in the West. Well, so this youth will take to the streets, 26%, to further tighten mobilization, so it will be like a cover, like, look. And then they'll start grabbing even more seriously and sending people to the territorial recruitment center. 33% say elections are soon with Zelensky running, while 35% fear and try to quell protests. So does all of this match your point of view?
Yeah.
Let's move on to your questions. Please write them in the live stream chat. We'll start with the YouTube community. Peter asks, Nord Stream was blown up and nothing happened. Only now they've caught some boat owner and are making him the scapegoat of the state of Ukraine. There are no questions, and since there aren't any, now we get friendship as well. After all, even Bernard Shaw said that the greatest crime is impunity. A criminal who isn't punished goes wild in his criminal acts. Will Hungary and Slovakia be able to rein him in?
President Trump has already helped Orban reach out to him, which is a separate episode. Why did Zelensky laughing threaten a neighboring European Union and NATO country and risk damaging relations with them? Relations with Poland are worsening. He said if you read and heard, there will be consequences with Poland if it's about the Volyn massacre. Well, in short, and there are unemployed citizens, as I understand it, will be deprived of some benefits. Well, that's just diplomacy. That's a person who is also with everyone.
That means Konstantin asks a question. Dennis, I heard that you are a supporter of libertarianism. Have you read the American article about libertarianism? It lists the disadvantages of this system, such as increased inequality, reduced social protection, restrictions in the area of rights and freedoms, contradiction to the principle of democracy, and so on. Do you agree with this, with these disadvantages of libertarianism?
No, I'm not sure that the person read the American article and the real one, maybe he read a Russian article. So look, the gap in equality, people will always be unequal, no matter the conditions, Russia, America, Saudi Arabia, or Pakistan. Experiments on rats were done long ago. There will never be equality since people differ in talent, work capacity, and more. Actually, I'm saying it's about individualism. Regarding the restriction of freedoms, you probably just don't understand the basics of libertarianism. Libertarianism is actually the highest level of freedom. Sasha, also if possible, one more minute about Manzyuk at the end before the questions. This concerns the question of when people will be like Manzyuk, not to get distracted by him. That will happen when the criminal code makes inciting hatred punishable. Second, when he focuses on making money and self-realization, certain conditions are needed, but currently most money comes from war.
Vitaly, good afternoon. Alexander Dennis. I have a question. Could Trump possibly not pressure Putin or Zelensky to make peace? Because for his friend Netanyahu, it won't be very convenient to keep paving Gaza over without the cover of the war in Ukraine. Thank you in advance for your answer.
I have a fundamental ideological disagreement with people like that. No, it's just stupidity. People usually know the United States president's role and others' involvement. You clearly love Putin. Well, your beloved Putin came to Alaska. Does that convince you?
I don't know what that question is. Please comment on Dmitry Kalezov's address to Trump. I don't know who Dmitry Kalezov is, me neither. Well, friends, could you clarify, or maybe it won't work out that way, Alexandra? Given 8 years of persecution, 2 impeachments, fabricated court cases tied to Trump's elections, the so-called Russian trace, and claims of CIA drug trafficking funding, Iraq, the democracy experiment. The claim that democracy in the United States exists for export seems quite reasonable. The United States media builds a glamorous image of democracy, so it's surprising how eagerly some people idolize the country. 5 billion for the coup and Rubio's words about governance. After everything that's been said, how can people keep shouting from every rooftop that the United States is the center of democracy?
Well, she probably reads the same magazines as the previous people who asked about libertarianism. Well, she was saying a bunch of nonsense, It even scares me. I'd like to conduct a medical experiment on people when they shout democracy. That's bad. So someone consciously prefers living under a dictatorship and being a slave. That's the alternative. For me, honestly, that's what interests me. Even though I'm not a scientist, I don't understand. She discussed some dogmas about exporting democracy. Even during this broadcast, we clearly drew a line between the Biden administration, Globalist, United States Agency for International Development, Soros, and President Trump.
Here's another interesting question. I'll give some comparisons to when Russia started the so-called gas war with Ukraine. This reflects the imperial chauvinist view. Dictatorial Russia is blackmailing innocent Ukraine. Yet Ukraine's actions with Druzhba, threatening Hungary, mirror that mentality too. What kind of echo? I mean, as the user writes, it might... All citizens everywhere need to realize that everyone acts in their own interests as much as possible. Stop taking propagandists seriously. Civil slogans are often just monetized. Thoughts? Dennis, let me say, I don't personally blame you for anything.
I don't blame you for anything, but are you against propaganda slogans? That's what this whole issue is about. That's what I can answer you. Zelensky, or rather Ukraine, no, not Ukraine, but Zelensky threatens to blow up the gas friendship. It's all Zelensky. It's just like it's not the United States of America exporting democracy, but the globalist Democrats. Set this boundary for yourself. I doubt you will, but maybe others will. Don't get it mixed up.
So Vladimir Chistyakov writes, Shelest, in Crimea, the Ukrainian language is considered official along with Russian and Crimean Tatar. But in fact, parents don't want their children to learn it, and the classes aren't filling up. And in general, it causes some kind of aversion. Please comment on this.
The Ukrainian language causes aversion?
Yes.
A person bothers me, but not the Ukrainian language. If I support Russian language freedom, I also support freedom for other languages spoken by Ukrainians, like Hungarian, not against Ukrainian, which I speak fluently and have always studied since kindergarten. So I really don't understand what the question is about. People just hate Ukrainians. I'm scared. I read such horrors, such nasty things. I don't understand what Ukrainians have done wrong to Russians. I see Russians as a specific ideology, not all of them. I'm not a Nazi or saying having a Russian passport makes someone bad, but those people believe that and it scares me.
Well, there's an information war going on, a kind of cognitive one. So we just need to remain human and make clear distinctions. There was another strike last night in Rostov, damaging 11 houses in a drone attack. Russia is not shelling Poltava or Sumy regions. There's no water issue in Sumy, and in Poltava they have electricity and water. The energy facilities were destroyed. In short, all this is still going on, but it's not like everyone is doing it. It's not all Ukrainians or everyone there. It's specifically the state hierarchy, those who are subordinate.
Of course.
To Zelensky on one side, Putin on the other. And people themselves perceive this, of course, as horror and tragedy, and this needs to be clearly understood. So, Elena asks, Yelisevich dislikes Putin's rule and Russia's direction, but claims Ukraine is great. Is the war solely to blame for your problem? No, probably not just the war.
I have always said that war is not the cause of problems, but the consequence of problems. I've always said that even before the war, conditions were bad for us under Zelensky and his approval rating was dropping. And I'm not blaming it just on this. Once again, I'm saying it's a consequence. And the fact is, I don't like Putin's rule because he shows aggression and fills his people with hatred toward Ukraine. How you live there isn't my concern. I'm not a Russian citizen, have never been there, and don't plan to visit. I've never said Russia should do anything specific. Just don't interfere with other countries or act aggressively. Otherwise, I'm not telling you how to live.
The user, probably judging by the last name, why don't you want to run for president? You understand yourself that God knows who will end up running.
Let's hold elections and revisit this later.
So, yes, friends, thank you all very much. Well, there's a conversation going on here. Well, that's right. People are writing, to be fair, why should the guest suddenly like Putin? Writes user Phoenix. Well, that's right. I mean, look, you don't have to like Putin either, and nobody has to. Or Zelensky, for example, right? Or, okay, let's say Macron, for example. But we're discussing the situation with you right now. It's a paradox, really, a paradox. So Russia is against Banderovщина, this ideology, right? It opposes it. Well, ideologically, there's even a war because of it. Poland approaches Wrocław from the east and west, declaring a veto and opposition, stating that the only issue is opposing Banderovщina. The thing is, in a surprising way, the Poles and the Russians end up being on the same side in this struggle, just from different angles, while the Ukrainians are the only ones suffering under the rockets, war, martial law, and dictatorship inside the country. Many people in Poland, including their children, also won't receive any payments there. Well, these 800 zloty payments there will be some obstacles, like some kind of Bandera issue. Yes, that's the reason. But the ones suffering are today's people. That's the horror of this situation.
Do you understand? United States Agency for International Development fueled this reason again. As a Kyiv resident, I have no problem with people in Lviv or Ivano-Frankivsk admiring Bandera and erecting monuments to him. Just carry out federalization, do whatever you want. I really don't mind that at all, but I don't want to see it in Kyiv. I oppose this ideology, but I have no issue with those who genuinely believe in it. Fueling war professionally with money is entirely different, and Navrovsky did well.
Yeah, kind of like that. He's a bit peculiar, but that's why he got elected. It's all been said. Let's put a period on this question. Dennis, how fair do you think Russia's demands are regarding neutrality, NATO, the Russian language, and denazification?
I don't know what denazification means. We only have Nazis if you count the professional ones or those who joined them like some misguided youth, and even they do it for the money they're given. Neutrality, for me, is not a concession to Russia. Neutrality and the Russian language are not concessions to Russia. For me, these are elements of the most important democracy and the development of a safe Ukraine. I don't see it as us conceding something to Putin. I supported this even before Putin's aggression. It's the right thing to do. It's simply what Ukraine needs. And earlier, this could have put Putin in a dead end if the country hadn't been run by Soros's people and if Zelensky hadn't been turned.
Denis Yarisevich was my interlocutor today. Thank you for your time and thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander.
Thanks, friends, for watching this broadcast. Please write in the comments what you think, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and in general, what you think about the war, peace, and the elections. Take care, be kind, wishing everyone light. Thank you, see you.